All right, so good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me tonight for celebrating sparrow migration. My name is Michelle Brosius, and I will be presenting the program this evening. This is a two-part event, and you are welcome but not required to join us for the accompanying bird walk we're having this Saturday, October 18th at 9 a.m. at the Cleveland Lakefront Nature Preserve in search of sparrows. This webinar tonight is to help prepare us for that bird walk. I will be introducing you to all 20 New World sparrow species of the family Passerellidae that have been reported at the location, according to eBird, even some of the rare ones. I will not be covering the house sparrow, as that is an old world sparrow originally from Europe and Asia. And just to set expectations, I'm primarily going to cover field marks and behaviors. I might touch on preferred habitat. Habitat is often helpful for identifying birds, but habitats can get a little inaccurate during migration. I also will not be covering vocalizations, as that's really next level birding and can be overwhelming for newer birders. Also, we are now beyond the breeding season for these birds, so they will not be singing. However, we may hear their little chip notes that usually indicate alarm or anxiety. All right, and I put that little a page animation, so it's like turning the pages of a field guide. Hope you like it. All right, so what is sparrow migration? We are all familiar with the concept of bird migration. It happens every spring and fall. A spring migration tends to move very quickly, but fall migration can be a little more drawn out. Certain bird species like shorebirds and swallows begin to migrate south as early as August, with the last of the bird species like waterfowl and water birds making their migration journey well into November. Warbler migration happens in September and tends to be a lot of fun, even though those birds aren't as colorful as they are in the springtime when they're getting ready to breed. And finally, sparrow migration happens in October. All right, so where can we find sparrows during their migration? The Cleveland Lakefront Nature Preserve is a wonderful location. Birds often stop at the lakeshore before and or after making the jump across Lake Erie to rest and refuel, and the preserve offers them a nice green patch on which to settle. I have the details there on the screen for the event this Saturday. We will meet in the parking lot of the preserve. All right, so let's dive into the birds. I'm going to start with some of our more common sparrows. It's safe to say that we're probably going to see the song sparrow at the preserve this weekend, as you can see by the illustrated checklist that I pulled from eBird down there at the lower left right here. These illustrated checklists that I've included in this presentation are specifically for the Cleveland Lakefront Nature Preserve location and show the frequency of the species being reported there over time. As you can see, the O there for October shows full bars, meaning it is very frequently reported, and it is in fact a very common bird throughout the year. For identifying sparrows by their physical appearance, we primarily look at the face and breast and sometimes the flanks. Also, the color of their bare parts, like legs and beak, can be indicators as well. It's very difficult to distinguish sparrows when their back is towards you and they're facing away, with some exceptions, of course. Features like the length of the tail and color of the nape can help narrow down species when you can't see these other features. Okay, so for the song sparrow, the first feature I noticed that makes this a song sparrow is the spot at the center of its breast. I have heard this spot cleverly referred to as a whole note. Another indicator is the coarse streaking on the breast of this bird. And then looking at the face, there is a reddish-brown stripe through the eye called an eye line, and reddish-brown malar stripes, which are those two darker stripes leading down from the beak on an otherwise grayish face, as well as reddish-brown stripes on the crown. And so here's another song sparrow, this time turned away from us, but looking back. We can't see that whole note or coarse streaking on the breast, but we can see the reddish-brown striping on the face and crown. Another indicator for this species is that long tail. Now, I will say that the overall coloration as well as amount of streaking of this species varies greatly across its range. This is its standard look for eastern US. As for behavior, Song sparrows flit through dense, low vegetation or low branches, occasionally moving onto open ground after food. They will show up at your backyard feeders, feeding off the ground. Their flights are short and fluttering with a characteristic downward pumping of the tail. All right, moving on to the swamp sparrow. As you can see from the illustrated checklist, the swamp sparrow is present year-round, but their numbers increase during migration. I feel that swamp sparrows often get confused with song sparrows in the field, maybe because they are about the same size. At least around here, the song sparrow can be found in a swamp sparrow's marshy habitat. However, they actually look very different. Let's dive into some of those differences now. Right, the swamp sparrow is darker overall with a rich reddish-brown crown, eyeline, and wings. It has a grayish breast with subtle fuzzy streaking instead of that coarse streaking found on the song sparrow. And swamp sparrows have a white throat. All right, they also have a grayish nape and buffy flanks. Now, my kids just got home from karate. I told them to be quiet, but if you hear them, I'm sorry. All right. This swamp sparrow individual is really dark, and that gray breast really stands out. Um, Swamp sparrows tend to perch and forage in low vegetation near the ground. They also enjoy foraging in shallow water or near the water's edge. They have longer legs compared to most other sparrows, which is an adaptation for wading in shallow water more easily. And you can also find them in brushy areas. The chipping sparrow is definitely a summer resident of Northeast Ohio, and they're still hanging around in good numbers in October. As you can see from the illustrated checklist, this species was observed at the preserve as recently as October 15th, so yesterday. So I went ahead and updated all of these checklists yesterday, not today. So it was probably seen today as well. All right, chipping sparrows overall have a slender body for a sparrow. They have a bright reddish-brown crown that turns a little more subdued during the non-breeding season. They have a dark eyeline, a black bill to match their eyeline, and an unstreaked neck and belly. And here's a really good look at an immature chipping sparrow in non-breeding plumage. Many thanks to Lenore Charnigo for the photo. As you can see, the non-breeding bird is paler than the previous photo. Immature birds have thin, dark streaks on a brownish crown. An adult in non-breeding plumage may have browner coloring on the crown, but not that bright reddish brown of the breeding bird. As for behavior, this is another sparrow that mostly feeds on the ground, where you can find them hopping or running through grass looking for seeds. And they prefer open woodlands and forests with grassy clearings, but you can also find them in parks or even in your backyard. All right, as you can see, the American tree sparrow is definitely a winter resident. They begin to arrive in October and are fully established back in our area by November. They have a bright rusty crown and a matching bright rusty eyeline on a gray face. They also have a bicolored bill, meaning the top or maxilla is a darkish slaty gray and the bottom or mandible is yellow. The tree sparrow also has a pronounced white wing bar. All right. American tree sparrows usually show a dark spot in the middle of their unstreaked breast. And American tree sparrows hop around on or close to the ground looking for grass or weed seeds. They are also known for perching on top of shrubs and goldenrod stalks, just like this individual here, or on low tree branches. Right, the field sparrow has a fluctuating year-round presence in Northeast Ohio, and as you can see from the illustrated checklist, is seen most often during migration. I think the field sparrow can look a lot like an American tree sparrow that I just covered, but the first field mark I noticed that is distinct for a field sparrow is the pinkish bill and legs. It also has a rusty crown and eyeline that I think seems to match their pinkish bare parts pretty closely. They can also have a rusty wash over their breast. And they have a gray face with a bold white eye ring. All right, field sparrows are well named as they can be found in fields and grassland habitats. This time of year, we can see them quietly feeding on weed and grass seeds on or near the ground, and they will easily flush into shrubby cover. And here's a side-by-side comparison of the three sparrows I just covered. To reiterate, the chipping has that black eyeline and a very white eyebrow between that eyeline and its rusty crown. Also notice the solid black bill. The American tree has a bright rusty eyeline and crown on a gray face, as well as a bicolored bill. And the field sparrow also has a rusty eyeline and crown on a gray face, but has a solid pink bill and a bold white eye ring. So they all have different colored bills. All right, the fox sparrow is a large sparrow at about 7 inches in length. It is here in Northeast Ohio for the winter, beginning to arrive in October. The fox sparrow is white underneath. The most distinct feature of a fox sparrow is the brown chevron-like markings that start around the breast and extend down the flanks. They can also have some brown splotches on the breast. They have a mix of rust and gray on the head. In fact, its entire back is a mix of rust and gray streaking. They also have a rusty medium-length tail. And the bill can be either yellowish or dark gray or anywhere in between, like this individual. Right, fox sparrows spend a lot of time on the ground, searching through leaf litter for insects and seeds. They can also be found hopping around under a bird feeder, which is exactly what this individual was doing here. And they tend to spend their winters in scrubby habitat and forests. Right, the eastern towhee is a sparrow that doesn't have the word sparrow in its name, and it also strays from the typical sparrow look, as you won't find any brown streaking on the adults of this species. They are prevalent in Northeast Ohio during the summer months, and then sightings become sparse in the winter. I saw one when I visited the Cleveland Lakefront Nature Preserve last week, and as you can see, the species has been observed since my visit too, as of yesterday, and probably today as well. I have pictured here a male eastern towhee. Males are characterized by their black upper part, such as a black head, breast, back, wings, and tail. Where males are black, the females are a chocolate brown, and I will show you a picture of a female in a moment. This is a large sparrow, just a little bit smaller than a robin. They have an extremely long tail. The tail corners are white and visible in flight. They have rufous sides and a white belly and red eyes. Now here is a female eastern towhee. As you can see, she has a chocolate brown head, breast, back, wings, and tail, although not all are visible in the photo. And I'm sorry about this photo, it's not very good. But I think it's good enough to see that the juvenile eastern towhee is brownish and has heavy streaking on the breast. And if we find another juvenile this weekend, I'll try to get a better picture. All right. So eastern towies prefer overgrown fields, woodlands, forest edges, and thickets. They need dense shrub cover. And they forage on the ground, scratching at leaves using both feet at the same time in a backwards hop. The dark-eyed junco is another sparrow species that doesn't have the word sparrow in its name, like the towhee. It also strays from the typical brown streaky sparrow look. The dark-eyed junco has an interesting range, but it's safe to say they have only been reported at the Cleveland Lakefront Nature Preserve outside of the breeding season. The adult male dark-eyed junco is a dark gray bird with white underparts. They also have a pale pink bill. They have white outer tail feathers that flash open, especially during flight. This one was ducking down to get some seeds. The coloration of female and juvenile dark-eyed juncos is variable, but can appear much browner than the male. And dark-eyed juncos forage on or near the ground, preferring to hop instead of walk. During the breeding season, dark-eyed juncos are territorial, but in winter they can form fairly large foraging flocks. They primarily eat seeds during the non-breeding season, just like this individual is doing here on last year's goldenrod.
How they got that.
Okay, the white-throated sparrow, as you can see, is mostly a winter bird for our region, but some individuals do hang around during the summer months. Their numbers are quite substantial at the Cleveland Lakefront Nature Preserve right now. Okay. As for their field marks, they have a bold black and white striped crown. There is also a color form in which that white stripe is tan, and research suggests that white striped individuals prefer to mate with tan striped individuals and vice versa. White striped individuals tend to be more aggressive and are better about defending nests and territories, and tan striped are more nurturing to young. This species has figured out that these traits complement each other well during the breeding season. And of course, they have their signature white throat for which they are named. They also usually have prominent yellow lores just above and forward of the eye. This feature can be less obvious on tan-striped birds. And they have a grayish bill. I always thought this picture was cute with a bit of snow at the end of its bill. This is a tan-striped individual. As you can see, the stripes on the crown are tan compared with the white throat. I often see this bird perched just above the ground on logs or low branches. However, when they're foraging, you will find them on the ground, hopping around and scratching through leaf litter. And just like the towhee, they will scratch backwards with both feet and then pounce forward on whatever they've uncovered. All right, the white-crowned sparrow is here primarily during migration, but it looks like some individuals have been reported throughout the winter. This is a sparrow that can get mistaken for the white-throated because of that bold black and white striped crown. They do not have a tan morph. However, the black stripes are brown on the juvenile birds. They also lack the yellow lores and white throat of a white-throated sparrow. They have a pale pink or yellow bill, whereas the white-throated sparrow has a gray bill. And they have a gray throat, breast, and nape. All right, here is a juvenile white-crowned sparrow. As you can see, this individual has brown stripes on the crown instead of black. You will find white-crowned sparrows at the edges of brushy habitat, hopping on the ground or perched on low branches. The savanna sparrow is a summer resident of Northeast Ohio, but it looks like they are sparsely reported at Cleveland Lakefront Nature Preserve during the breeding season. However, we could have them there during fall migration, and as you can see, this species has been reported there recently, as of October 14th. All right, the savanna sparrow is brown above with dark streaks. They have crisp brown streaks down a white breast and yellow lores, though the amount of yellow can be variable. The savanna sparrow feeds on seeds on or near the ground. and they prefer a grassland habitat. The grasshopper sparrow, unfortunately, hasn't been seen since September 28th. However, we might still find it this weekend. The sparrow is overall brown and tan. They have a mottled tan, black, and chestnut back. They also have a plain face with a white eye ring and yellow lores. This species stays close to the ground and is on the small side for a sparrow. It is among the smallest birds in its habitat, which is grasslands, hayfields, and open pastures. The clay-colored sparrow will also be difficult to find at the preserve, but was seen in September. You can see that historically it has been seen in late October as well. This would definitely be a fun bird to find. This species is a small sparrow with a slender body. They are pale, tan and gray birds with a contrasting facial pattern. As you can see, it has a pale stripe above the eye and a darker contrasting cheek. They have a pale gray collar and a streaked crown. They typically forage low in shrubs or on the ground within close reach of shrubby cover. And in winter, look for them in flocks of other sparrow species. Sparrows will often flock together during the non-breeding season, so it is not a good practice to identify one or two in a larger flock and assume they're all the same species. Right, the clay-colored sparrow often gets confused with the juvenile and or non-breeding chipping sparrow. So here they are side by side. Notice the dark eyeline extends through the eye to the bill of the chipping sparrow, pictured on the right, but stops at the eye of the clay-colored sparrow, pictured on the left. So no eyeline between the eye and bill of the clay-colored. The clay-colored also has a strong, dark mustache, whereas the chipping has a much less prominent mustache. Sibley also notes in his field guide that the chipping sparrow has a very distinct, narrow, whitish arcs below and above the eye. On the clay-colored, there are pale feathers all the way around the eye, forming a buffy eye ring. All right, the Vesper sparrow is only seen in our area during migration. We have had a recent sighting. Hopefully, there's another one passing through this weekend. They are a large, chunky sparrow and are brown overall with crisp streaks. They have a thin white eye ring. They also have a chestnut patch on the shoulder that's sometimes difficult to see. I think it's showing a little bit in this photo. What's not showing in this photo is the white outer tail feathers, which are seen in flight, though not as prominent as a junco's white tail feathers. They are usually running or hopping through grass, and in winter they can also be found in mixed sparrow flocks, just like the grasshopper sparrow. All right, the Lincoln sparrow is usually only seen at the preserve during migration. The point of the head of this bird often has a crested appearance, and it has a rounded belly. As for coloration, this species has a gray face with a pale eye ring and a buffy wash across the breast, painted over some neat thin streaking. Their crown is striped brown and black with a gray central stripe. The Lincoln sparrow forages on or near the ground, rarely staying far from dense cover. And during migration, Lincoln sparrows use brushy fields, forest edges, and thickets. I would say, looking at the illustrated checklist, that it is not likely we will see a Henslow sparrow at the preserve this weekend, but you never know. The Henslow sparrow is very hard to see as it lives amongst dense grasses and spends a lot of its time on the ground in those grasses. During the breeding season, you are more likely to observe this bird by hearing its call than you are by actually seeing it. However, it looks like this individual popped up for Tom Fishburne and he was able to take a photo, so we might get lucky too. This is a small sparrow with a large flat head. They are tan and buff with sharp black streaks. And they have an olive or yellowish wash over the face. You can see the contrast in this photo between the face and the cleaner looking body. And now we're getting into the sparrows that haven't been seen at the preserve yet this year. These are definitely rarer, but I want to show them to you anyway. If it so happens that the Nelson sparrow is present this weekend, it will definitely stand out from the crowd. This is a richly colored sparrow with saffron yellow markings, mainly on the eyebrow, throat, and breast, as well as some saffron streaking along the flanks. Nelson sparrows prefer wetlands and feed on the ground, often scurrying across small openings in the vegetation. They also sometimes perch on top of shrubs. The LeConte sparrow hasn't been seen at the preserve since 2017. It is a rarity for our area as it migrates through the Great Plains to winter in the south central US. It is also reported as a difficult bird to see and almost never breaks cover. However, it seems it did so for my friend Tyler McLean, who kindly donated this photo for my presentation. This sparrow at first glance looks very similar to the Nelsons that I just covered, with the same saffron yellow markings over the eyebrow, throat, breast, and flanks. However, it is a brighter and cleaner looking bird as it lacks the gray undertones of the Nelsons and has crisp instead of muted streaking along the flanks. This sparrow prefers boggy meadows with dense grass cover and forages on the ground, preferring to flee on foot. Now, we are out of the lark sparrow's range, though its summer range does dip into western Ohio. That explains the limited recorded observations at the preserve and also explains why it hasn't been seen at the preserve since 2021. However, we could get another vagrant individual. I hope so because this is a really neat looking bird. The most distinct feature is the chestnut brown patch on its cheek and matching crown stripes. It also has a black mustache that extends downward from a light gray beak and a black spot on its breast. This is another bird that prefers grasslands and pastures where they feed on the ground on seeds and insects. All right, the Harris's sparrow is the last sparrow I'll be covering in this presentation, and it was way out of its range when it visited the preserve last year. It breeds in northern Canada and winters in the Great Plains. They are the second largest sparrow in North America, the towhee being the largest. They have that distinct black crown, face, and bib. These black feathers may be speckled with white in the winter, but it is still a very bold look. Non-breeding individuals have brown cheeks and nape. These areas are gray during the breeding season. And Harris's sparrows spend a lot of time foraging on the ground, often venturing boldly out into the open to look for food. So this is not a sparrow. This is a female red-winged blackbird, and as you can see, there are plenty of them at the preserve right now. They're a beautiful bird, and you can certainly admire them, but they won't be the focus of our walk. This bird may be streaky like a sparrow, but take a look at that formidable beak. The blackbird beak is much longer, thicker at the base, and more pointed than a sparrow's beak. Sparrows have a shorter, thicker bill overall. All right, so we're now going to have a quick quiz. I'm going to show a bird photo, and 4 multiple choice options. You can annotate on the slide, marking or making your mark on the option you think is correct, or you can give your answer in the chat. To access your annotation toolbar, it will be either at the top or the bottom of your Zoom screen. It's at the top for me. And you will see a pencil icon labeled with Annotate. Click that option and it will open the annotation toolbar where you can select a checkmark stamp or a drawing line or even text. Go ahead and make your selection, and then when I show the quiz question, put your mark right on the screen for the correct answer. If you do not wish to participate, that's fine too. Just try to get the answer in your head so you could see if you're correct. All right, so find the annotation toolbar and get ready. Here we go. Which sparrow species is this? Is it an A, white-throated sparrow, B, Lincoln sparrow, C, swamp sparrow, or D, eastern towhee? Notice the buffy wash across the breast painted over some neat thin streaking. Also notice the crown is striped brown and black with a gray central stripe. I see some have marked Lincoln sparrow, and you are correct. This is a Lincoln sparrow, and I took this picture at the preserve last week. So they are definitely there. All right, so I'm going to clear the annotations so we can begin again. And there are 7 questions total. All right, so here we go. Now for the second bird. What do you think this is? Is it a swamp sparrow, song sparrow, field sparrow, or Nelson sparrow? Notice the spot at the center of its breast. What do we call this spot that relates to its name? Also notice the coarse streaking on the breast of this bird. And I see we have some answers on song sparrow, and you are correct. This is a song sparrow, and we call that spot a whole note for the song sparrow. All right, clearing those drawings. And here we go for the third bird. Is this an American tree sparrow, a lark sparrow, a chipping sparrow, or a field sparrow? Notice the pink bill and feet. And notice how that pink bill matches the rusty crown and eyeline. Everyone seems to be hanging around field sparrow, that last option there. And you are correct. That is a field sparrow. All right, now for bird number 4. What do you think this is? It's an easy one. You should all get this. Is this a Harris's sparrow, eastern towhee, dark-eyed junco, or Savannah sparrow? Notice this bird is dark gray above and white below and has a pale pink bill. And you are all correct. Dark-eyed junco it is. Now for our 5th bird. Is this an American tree sparrow, field sparrow, song sparrow, or clay-colored? Notice the bright rusty crown and a matching bright rusty eyeline on a gray face. This bird also has a bicolored bill and a prominent white wing bar. And the answer is, you are correct, American tree. 2 more birds here. All right, so for bird number 6, what do you think this is? We have options of white crowned sparrow, white-throated, swamp, and savanna. Notice that bright white throat. That should be a dead giveaway. Also notice that black and white or tan striped crown and yellow lores. And you are all correct. That is a white-throated sparrow. And finally, last quiz question. Bird number 7. Is this a white-crowned sparrow, white-throated, swamp, or song? Notice that bold black and white striped crown. Also notice there's no yellow lores. This bird also has a gray throat and nape. And you all got it. I must be a really good teacher. It is a white-crowned sparrow. And that's it for the quiz. If you found yourself missing some of these, please don't feel badly. I've presented you with a lot of content to memorize today. Once you get out there and get birding, hopefully some of this comes back to you and starts making sense. I'm going to clear these drawings, and that's a wrap. I did not have photos of all these sparrows, so thank you to photographers Lenore Charnago, Tom Fishburne, and Tyler McLean for the use of their photos throughout this presentation. Thank you to the birdwalk leaders who will be joining me at the preserve this Saturday, Nancy Howell, Bill Dininger, and Dave Grass-Kemper. Please don't forget to join us at the Cleveland Lakefront Nature Preserve on October 18th at 9 a.m. And are there any questions or comments? Please feel free to take yourself off mute, or if you have any, you can put your questions in the chat as well. I'm seeing thank you and thanks so much. You are very welcome. Elise, looking forward to seeing you there as well. Any questions? All right, well, that's it. Hope to see you all this weekend at the preserve. If not, I will catch you out there birding another time. All right, have a good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me once again. Bye now.